What's up, guys? I'm in the car again, pre-workout, got all my brain stuff going, so I'm able to think and hopefully voice what's on my brain the best right now. And I'm going to talk about a deload. So this is going to be a three-part series. In this episode, if you want to call it that, in this video, whatever, I'm going to talk about the training aspect of it. In part 2, I'll talk about the diet aspect of it. In part 3, I'll talk about the supplementation part of it. The training aspect, let's just set up the scenario of why are we deloading? Well, deload is a very generic term. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a certain style of training. From my perspective and the way that I program all my athletes and the people that I train, is a deload is a step away from the current style of training that we're in, just because it's time to get away from it. And the better trained that a person is, the faster their body will adapt, so the more they're going to deload in most cases. Deload, in my opinion, really means that it's a plateau buster. So when you're starting to have a drop off in focus or performance, if you're not as motivated to train, it's time to deload. And there's nothing wrong with a deload. Deload does not mean a break. It means a change from what you're currently in. In fact, a deload is just as challenging. It's just challenging in a different way. So for most of us, we're used to getting this hypertrophy stimulus where we're doing a lot of volume, we're training frequently, a lot of sets, potentially a lot of intensifiers, a lot of oxidative stress. And by oxidative stress, I mean like you're just getting a pump and you're creating muscular damage pretty frequently. And you hit a plateau. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean your program doesn't work anymore. It means that you need to change it. So what do you do in this deload? The easiest thing that I do for myself is I increase the frequency at which I train each muscle group. So get away from the bro split a little bit. Train 3 or 4 muscle groups in a training session, and train those muscle groups more frequently at a lower volume, which is completely the opposite of what you were probably doing, right? You were getting each muscle group maybe twice a week. You were doing a lot of volume on them. And in addition, you were taking a lot of sets to like executable failure or lactic failure. In my deload, I don't do that at all. So I'm going to be doing more sets in a lower rep range at a higher intensity, which means I'm closer to what most of you guys would measure as a 1 rep max, even though I don't measure all that crap. But I'm closer in, I'm heavier in load intensity, and also my duration of actual workout time is down, but my rest time in between sets is up. So let's recap what the deload typically would be. It would be 3 to 4 body parts per workout. It would be maybe 1 to 2 exercises for each one of those body parts. It would be very low in volume, okay? So my sets wouldn't be like extremely high. It would be lower in repetitions, but higher in intensity, and the rests would be higher. Also, the thing that I take into account for more advanced people is how I'm coupling my body parts together. So say like when your original training phase that you have been doing for a while that you're burnt out in, you've been doing like supersets, or you've been going from set to set of the same body part, you're getting what's called kind of like a muscle lactic stimulus. You're getting only lactic acid going into one tissue at a time before you move on to the next one, which is the typical way that most people train. When I go into my deload, I'll try to change that lactic environment. So I will go, for instance, my first day may be a push-pull day, so like a chest and a back day, and then 2 small body parts. So let's just say like triceps and rear delts. And what I will do is I'll try to get lactic acid going to several body parts at once. So I may do trisets with breaks in between them. So for example, I may do like some form of a chest press with a break, a long break, into some form of a row or a pull down with a long break, into some form of like a bicep curl with a long break. So nothing is actually tri-setted. It's not a legitimate tri-set. And I'm not training any muscle groups back to back or the same one, for instance, okay? And what that does is it gives what's called a more of a total lactic stimulus. And I will talk to you why that's important in the dietary aspect, part 2 of this. But what that does to give you guys a little bit of a foreshadowing, is it allows me to pull my calories a little bit lower. And I'll tell you why. It has everything to do with glycogen in that case, okay? So the deload, for me, is a great change of focus. Like, I get to focus more on numbers and less on like physiological feel. So that might be something that you guys enjoy. You'll get to track your numbers a little bit more, and in that deload phase, you should be able to see like maybe a little bit of increase, because your contractile tissue should get more efficient at moving loads, which is something some of you may not have been focusing on. In addition, since you're not doing so much volume, you may find that you recover better. So that's the one thing that I want to point out last, is that you should not really be getting sore in your deload phase. You want to stay away from that mechanical stress that you've been giving your body for so long. Like, remember, this is recovery, but it's active and intense recovery. So you need to do it very mindfully. The last thing is, how long do you stay in a deload phase? Well, for me, I'll stay in it sometimes up to 4 weeks, but what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make sure that my system feels recharged, but more so my brain. So when I go back into whatever phase I want to go to, if it's my original hypertrophy phase, I want to make sure that I'm ready to have all guns firing. And for me, it's usually somewhere between like 21 days to a full month. And the big advice that I have for you guys is, don't be afraid to rest in this phase. So I may have planned out to do 2 days of training and then 1 day off, but it's not uncommon for me to do 2 days of training and then 2 days off, or 3 days of training and 2 days off, because the whole deal is that I'm over recovering in this phase. I'm training intensely in my training sessions, but I'm over recovering because, like I said, in the dietary one, I'll talk about it, but calories are going to be a little bit lower, and recovery is everything here. When I go into the hypertrophy phase, like I said, I need to have all cylinders ready to fire. So I'm actually thinking down the road with my training here. I'm not getting caught up in winning sessions here. I'm thinking like, where do I want to be in 4 weeks, and how do I want to feel? And then all the things of that session, all the goals are based off of that long-term goal. So hopefully this video helps. Stay tuned for part 2, guys. I'll talk about, you know, all the ins and outs of the nutrition things that I do to my deloads to make sure that they're effective from a body composition standpoint and ensuring that I get performance at the same time.